Well, there's not about to be it. Well,
all right, we're back. Ignore the coaching chatter at the beginning for another episode of It Is What It Is podcast. I am your host, Cody Kelly. Look, connect with me on all streaming platforms. You know where to reach me. You can subscribe at the link below. We'd love to hear from you. We have an amazing episode focusing on the election watch. I have, again, one of my two favorite guests, juggernauts in their own right, the good doctor, Jonathan Shepard, and the capital venturist and just philanthropic financier and just corporate amazing guy, and the Right Reverend Elder Derek Scott. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, sir. How are you this evening?
Hey, man, I'm getting amped. Today was leg day in the gym, so I'm pretty much paralyzed from the waist down. But, I'm just sore from the waist down, So other than that, I'm doing well. Tomorrow's the election and, the end of the world. So, who knows, right? So doing well. Excited. How you doing today, Dr. Shepard?
I'm doing good. I'm excited about tomorrow. I'm excited about our future.
You are.
I am. I am one of those people that I'm not going to allow the negativity to turn me or get me turned down. I'm still somebody over here says they're a hope pusher. So hey, I concur with you. I'm a hope pusher, and I don't believe there will be any violence that will come out of this that will deter from the country moving forward.
Awesome. So that means you voted for Kanye?
Kanye was nowhere on the ballot.
That's true. I didn't see his name. I wasn't going to vote for him anyway, but I didn't see his name.
Was on the ballot. So
let's get it started. So predictions. I'm going to start with you, Derek. What is your prediction for tomorrow? I've been looking at a lot of the polling. There's a 10-point national lead right now for Biden. Polls are deceiving, right? 2016, I think Hillary had a 6-point national lead, right? And lost. So I'm not necessarily one for polling results. But what is your prediction for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think, 2016, like you said, we were watching the polling data coming into it. And, the reality is the polls were correct in 2016, right? It had Hillary ahead by 4 points. And essentially she won the popular vote by 4 points, 4 to 5 points. And so the polls were right. But as we know in this country, the Electoral College determines the vote. And so I think, the 10 points that we're seeing, this margin right now, I think personally, this is not any scientific rhyme or reason. I just think that I think Biden has pulled out with a strong lead here. And I think there are some key swing states that what Hillary couldn't do 4 years ago was get certain people off the couch to actually vote. And I think the difference that we're seeing this year, especially with early elections, is that people who were indecisive 4 years ago and decided to stay home are actually making a decision and they're going out to vote this time around. And I think that's going to be enough to swing this election. And I don't think it's going to be as close as I just personally don't think it's going to be as close as people think it will be. But I think we will see some surprises with some of those swing states still.
Awesome. Dr. Shepard, what is your prediction for tomorrow?
Prediction for tomorrow. Prediction is that we will see some surprises. Some states that normally have voted Republican or have gone to the red. To the Republicans, right. They will now become purple or blue. And I really do believe that. I think North Carolina has a very strong shot of turning blue. And I think even Florida, I think North Carolina and Florida, that Biden has a wonderful chance of winning. I think Texas and Arizona are probably still a little ways. Right. But if he wins Texas, if Biden wins Texas, then it's game over, truthfully. So I believe that Biden will win Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. I happened to be in Pennsylvania last weekend to speak. And when I tell you, every commercial that came on the TV after the show, even during football, was about the election. It was amazing. It is swamped up there. What I also will predict is that we will have a change in our Senate. I do believe that the Senate will be Democratic control, maybe by just one person, but it will. The Democratic Party will now own the Senate. I think that we're looking for a change. This feels like 2008. If you all remember that when Barack Obama first won, this feels like 2008 when that blue wave came on through. So those are just some of my predictions.
Do you think Jamie Harrison is going to beat Lindsey Graham out there in the great old state of South Carolina?
You know, I think he has a good chance. I haven't followed it closely enough to know the ins and outs. I know that both sides have been well funded, and so it remains to be seen. I think Lindsey Graham's time is up. That's my personal opinion because he waffles too much. You just don't know what to do with him. So
that makes sense. So I'm going to go this one. What does a Biden-Harris presidency look like? Let's say Biden-Harris wins. I'll make no surprise. I voted for him, right? And it's not, I just thought better. That was just a better option. Personally, love Kamala Harris. I think Biden's he'll do the job, right? So let's say they win. Let's say we don't get the shock of 2016. And there's not an SNL skit to follow, and you have a new presidency. What does that mean for the U.S. going forward? Is it paramount? Is it like 2008, or is it more of a kind of back to normal, back to 90s type feel with very little what I would say radical progression? And Derek, we'll start with you.
I think this is a defining moment for the Democratic Party. And I think if with the Biden-Harris presidency, I think the next 4 years will be a very pivotal point in the party's sort of progression of whether or not it actually moves in this very progressive direction while also addressing some of these systematic issues around race, systematic issues around how we address social policy in our country. There are a lot of people that don't feel and don't believe, and without sharing my own bias, who feel that the federal government should not have this socialist role, right? We are a capitalist society, and it should function that way. And at the state level is where a lot of these social impacts and social decisions should be made and funded, and not at the federal level. And so I think there's going to be sort of this balance where we see the Democrats go all in for what is a very progressive social agenda. We're going to see the moving of a lot of civil rights. And when I say civil rights, around gender and around sex, sexual orientation, the LGBTQIA community, we're going to see a lot more around addressing issues of what the family structure looks like. We're going to see, I think we are going to see the courts get packed. I think the Supreme Court may even see a push with expanding those seats on the Supreme Court. Joe Biden wouldn't go as far as to say he wasn't going to do it, but he wouldn't go as far as to say he would, which leads me to believe that he's strongly thinking about it. And so I think that's going to happen. And I think that that's going to really drive the direction of the party. And then lastly, I think there's going to have to be a stake in the ground around this whole conversation around the Black contract with America, or this Black agenda, and what it actually looks like and what problems it's actually going to solve. Because I don't think people, like our Ice Cubes and the Lil Waynes of the world who have been very, very vocal. I think at this point now there's going to be a fire held to Biden and Kamala to say, okay, y'all got it. Now what you going to do with it? How are you going to address these issues that we've been very vocal about? We've come with, let's see you execute on this plan. And if the Dems drop it this time, I think in 4 years from now, they're going to be held accountable in a very strong way at the polls.
So you think that the Lift Every Voice plan will actually come into some sort of implementation?
I think it's the plan itself is noble, but I don't think that it's comprehensive in addressing sort of specific needs and specific goals that target the African American community. I think a lot of it is broad, like things like we're going to expand tax credit programs that directly benefit Black and Brown communities, but that doesn't necessarily say we're going to move the economic wealth gap for Black and Brown communities. And so I think while there are programs that are targeted towards addressing issues in Black and Brown communities, and those programs as a byproduct sort of move the needle for us, I think there has to be a more demonstrative exercise of saying, how do we move Black home ownership? How do we move the needle on wealth enhancement and getting dollars directly into the hands of Black and Brown folks? How do we eliminate debt for people of color, whether it's student loan debt or debt that they've taken on to start new businesses, access to capital? These have to be very, very targeted things that right now I don't think the Lift Every Voice plan directly addresses, but I think it starts to sort of scratch the surface a little bit of what we can see as a ever evolving conversation that needs to happen over the next few years.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think the Lift Every Voice plan, the Platinum plan, the Contract for Black America are great philosophical truths, right? And probably the Lift Every Voice plan is a little bit more fleshed out, right? Because it had to go through the CBC. But it's still not really addressing the iceberg. But let's take it up there. Dr. Shepard, what if Trump wins? Let's say 2016 happens all over again. Let's say Florida goes, my prediction is that Florida actually will go to Trump. Let's say Texas doesn't break and go purple. It actually stays red. Let's say Jamie loses South Carolina. Right now they're neck and neck. Let's say Lindsey pulls it out even by a very narrow margin. I do have Biden winning Wisconsin and Michigan, which is different, but I don't necessarily have him winning Pennsylvania. Let's say he gets a magical 270 electoral votes, or it goes down to a Supreme Court decision, which we know right now the court is in favor of him, right, with the new appointment. What does that mean going forward?
What does that mean going forward? I mean, you gave too many hypotheticals there, Cody.
Well, what does it mean? What does it mean? Let's start politically. Let's start politically, and then let's flush it out. What does it mean politically going forward?
Yeah, I mean, politically going forward, if Trump wins, this means that we have reasserted that his agenda is okay. That's what that means. When you are up for re-election or for a promotion or whatever it is, when your term is up and you get voted back in, that means that people are okay with the track that you are on. The problem is that people are not okay with the track that Trump is on. And so I need to answer even some of the questions that the question that you just asked earlier of Derek, and I'm glad he dealt with that perspective, because I don't have to deal with that perspective. But let me tell you what is the biggest thing that is going to be on the platter for both the Democrats and the Republicans is going to be healthcare. The reason why Trump is losing is not because of economic, is not because of the racial injustices. It is because he got COVID-19, period. I stand by that. If he had not gotten the coronavirus, we would probably see the polls be even tighter and maybe even shifted. When he got the coronavirus and he was cavalier, and those people who we've had 220 plus thousand people die. We're approaching 230,000. Everyone in this country knows someone who's been affected by this virus. And when our leader was cavalier, the people said, no, we can't take that anymore. So healthcare is going to be on the platter for both of the parties. And we're going to have to see how we're going to take care of this. We can't get into the racial injustices. We can't even get into some other things until we know as a people that we're going to be okay coming out of this pandemic, because it is not a guarantee. Now, as a faith believer, I know that things will be okay, but I don't know how long things are going to stay in which they are. Dr. Anthony Fauci, if we listen to what this man is saying, we are in for a lot of hurt. He knows what he's talking about. There is no discrepancy amongst the scientists regarding what is happening here. So I like the things that we are going to be projecting to happen, but the number one thing that we must deal with, whether it is Trump, whether it is Biden who wins, is what are we going to do about the health of the people in this country? And if Trump continues to do what he's doing, the health of the people are in jeopardy. And
how do you address that? You talked about the health. So I would say 70-30 agree. I think it's a split. I think health and econ are probably hand in hand, and one is affecting the other. When it comes to addressing health challenges, right? That's hard because it's so layered, but specifically COVID, right? And how its impact on the world has been. Where do we start? Is it just shut everything down? I mean, you're in the medical field. You are a doctor, not a pretend doctor on one of these shows. You're a real MD. You're a real doctor, hence the screen name right there, right? What do you tell? What do you recommend? What is the plan going forward? Do you say shut it down and, until we come out with a vaccination that has gone through proper trial testing, don't move? What is the plan going forward?
No. The thing is not to shut it down until a vaccine, because you could be shut down for years. So no, that's not the plan. And you don't hear the scientists saying shut down. So that's not the plan, to shut down. The plan is to have a comprehensive plan that spells out what we need to do to protect ourselves until a vaccination is available. That's the problem. There is not something that people can have a roadmap to follow. Everybody wants to blame this one. Whoever gets in, whether it be Trump, he can still turn around. Biden gets in. I pray that there is a comprehensive plan. And I see one of the comments says people need to wear a mask.
Right.
Mask saves lives.
Yeah.
There's no debate about this.
Yeah.
And then when we have certain gatherings, we need to be able to follow the protocols and guidelines. I've been to enough things outside of my house now. I've been to my job now to know how to be able to care for people carefully and not get the virus or not get sick.
Right.
So we've been going through this long enough to know how to behave ourselves. The reason why we're not behaving ourselves is because we have leaders in control who don't know how to behave themselves, and people are modeling what they see.
Do you think a national mask mandate is the appropriate response?
Yes.
And how would anyone caught without a mask would be penalized, or?
That would be up to the states to determine. But yes, there's not really, I don't need to give a response or elaborate response to that. Yes. You need to wear a mask. Yes. Do you need to wash your hands? Yes. Do you need to watch your distance? Yes. These are things that have been proven over and over again to work.
No, I agree. I personally wear a mask. I've always been an advocate for it since Fauci has made his recommendation, because I believe in science. I think a face mask is just as probably going to show. Just I call it the condom for the face, right? Like, you need to wear one if you're going to be socially active, right? So this is just me. This is my wild sense of humor. But speaking of that, hey, this is what it is. You can say whatever you want on this show. So when we talk about translating it now, so live in Chicago, right? You guys are native Chicagoans. So our COVID guidelines, new restriction ordinances went into practice last weekend, right? Restaurants are basically shut down. Church now has to abide by an even more restrictive guideline going forward, as far as having people, inside the service and whatnot. And it's just like it's a domino effect. I totally agree with it. I totally support it. I also feel like it's a bit disingenuous. And what I mean by that, if you don't have an economic plan that supports this mandate, what are you really saying? Are you telling people to stay home and to starve? I always feel like I think people don't have a problem obeying, right? I think it's just you also have to provide economic salvation. You can't just have one or the other, and they go hand in hand. So Derek, right? This is your area. The lack or the economic impact has been catastrophic. What would you like to see from the federal government, despite whoever gets in, going forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because if we're going to ask people to sort of temper down, and we're going to ask people to change their behaviors, we also have to make people whole, or to some extent provide some relief to people who are experiencing challenges. And I think about restaurateurs, right? One of our tenants is a restaurant that you typically would have 90 or 90 or so seats in the restaurant. And now he can only serve, up to about 30 people in his restaurant. He's at about a third of his capacity. He's expanded his outdoor space to try to, we're in Michigan, so he's trying to increase his, season to allow for outdoor dining. But had we not given him, several months of free rent, he would have had to terminate 14 employees, right? And he's not eligible for PPPs, and he's not eligible for some other things because a lot of his employees, because of the way he has to pay for them. In many places where we see small businesses, in places like Chicago and Detroit, we have an informal economy. And so with these informal economies, there are a lot of people who are apprehensive about participating in federal programs. There are a lot of people who are apprehensive about giving out their personal, their business information to apply for certain types of funding and support. And so I think there's going to have to be a combination of resources. One, that directly impacts small businesses, that gets money directly into their pockets. And we're not talking about loans, right? We can't do more and more loans because people are already at their debt limits. People are already tapped on sort of their credit profiles. And so we're talking about immediate relief that allows people to continue to make regular monthly payments, but then also relieving some burden on the individuals with federal mortgage programs, for instance, right? We gave the banks this is crazy. We gave the banks a huge break in this last relief package, and then left it up to the banks to say, maybe we'll pass that relief on to the average mortgage holder, right? Which is crazy. My father had COVID for several weeks and was just kind of out and down. And so couldn't work, couldn't do some things. And so we're calling his bank, who has a program that they use at their discretion to determine whether or not they're going to allow him 30 days or whether or not they're going to allow him 90 days or 120 days for forbearance. No, let's make it clear. The federal government needs to hand down a mandate that says that any bank that takes a relief on a federal mortgage or federal loan program needs to pass 6 months or 12 months worth of relief on to the borrower. And so I think without those level of mandates that comes directly from the Treasury and directly from these stimulus packages that come down, I think we're going to see people hurt. And if people are hurting, they're going to go out and make decisions based on their need. They're going to leave their homes. They're going to go do what's best for their family. And the public health aspect of that may take second place to the fact that I need to put food on the table. I've got medication to buy. I've got a senior that I'm taking care of. I've got kids that I'm taking care of. And so we know that people are going to make their own decisions. Right. And using your example, Cody, some people don't strap up and use protection. So not everybody's going to put on a mask. Right?
Baby mamas,
they're going to make that decision. And so I think we've got to make it easier for people to make the decision to do the right thing.
That's true. Could you? Yeah.
Let me just say this, Cody, and I agree with everything Derek said. The government has the capability to bail us out. Period. I've seen other countries do it. So I hear what you're saying, but it's not rocket scientists. It baffles me. Why are we sitting having these discussions when the federal government can do it? They do it for other people.
And it's not a partisan issue. This isn't a partisan thing. This is American people are hurting. This is not Democrat, Republican. You just need to get it done. And the fact that we can push through a Supreme Court justice in less than 30 days, but not have a conversation about a stimulus package lets us know where we sit in the minds of those decision makers. And I think that has to change if we're going to curb this virus. That economic policy is going to have to change, because people are going to suffer, and they will make decisions that are in the best interest of their own families, and not in the best interest of the collective whole.
Absolutely.
No, well said. I think both of you are dead on, especially because our money's not backed by anything. We've been off the gold standard for years. It's literally printed currency. Just print more, and I know you would make Steve Mnuchin and a lot of other, economists really mad by saying just print more, but literally just press print, So I totally agree. Let's take it to how it impacts. So Dr. Shepard, there's this talk that if Biden gets in, socialized medicine, first of all, newsflash, obviously I believe in capitalism. I'm an American. I participate in the economic opportunities that have been afforded to me. And to some degree, I'm a capitalist. Yet I do believe in more of a, I won't say control, but definitely a imbalanced market, right? Like there shouldn't be these extreme just outliers, right? Like $1 trillion companies scare me with no taxation, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I just think that there needs to be responsibility across the board. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to socialized medicine, that's the terminology that is thrown around. And you being in the medical field, what does that mean? Bring clarity, right? Because people think that socialized medicine is a bad thing. Just people might think that means the government is saying, I can't go see Dr. Shepard. I got to go see Dr. Phil. I don't like Dr. Phil. Right. So what does that mean? How can the government help? The two-part question, the second part, how can the government help restructure or reimagine these services so that U.S. citizens can benefit in the most advantageous way?
Well, to answer the question simply, socialized medicine means different things to different people. So I don't know to which person I'm speaking to, but to Bernie Sanders, it means something different. To Joe Biden, it means something. So people like to throw around this term socialized medicine or socialism. People really need to go back to their history books and read up on what socialism is. And so socialized medicine, I think what people are referring to is where we have healthcare for all, and that it is a equal payer system. So right now in America, in the capitalist system, we have different insurance companies who profit from people's illness. Okay, people profit. These companies profit from how sick you are, and they really profit off of those who are elderly and who have chronic illnesses, because those are the persons who go to utilize the services the more. So they're signing up these persons. And again, I was talking with somebody here in Maryland just about this recently. And so we have to understand that the way in which our system right now is set up for these big profits to be made off of the misfortune of other people. Yeah. In socialized medicine, these profits should not be as big. They may be there, but what it is creating a healthcare system where people cannot profit as much from a person's physical or mental illness. And I say mental illness because when you look at our system right now, until Obamacare, mental illness was really not even covered by most insurance programs, if you didn't know that or not. And still, even to this day, it is the state programs, the state Medicaid programs that actually provide the best mental health care. Wow. You need to go check your plan. And in addition to that, you would, for those who have mental health issues, you could only get a certain number of sessions. So if you're depressed, you can only get 15 sessions in a whole year. You telling me I got to get healed in 15 sessions? Right. So, so when you talk about socialized medicine, we were looking at healthcare plans that would provide certain benefits so that people are not taxed. And again, I'm just keeping it very simple as much as possible, layman's terms. where people can receive hopefully the same type of health care. Because the problem also now with our system is that there's different levels of care. And because if you don't have a job in this country, many people can't have healthcare benefits, which is why we're seeing so many people go into our emergency rooms and filling up those areas, using up all those resources. So really our system is broken, because now when you go to the hospital for routine preventative care, you have now utilized so many dollars that hospitals are now literally trying to cut off how many people can go into the emergency rooms. That's why all these urgent care centers are popping up, you all, because they're trying to cut the number of people going into emergency rooms. It's kind of working, but it's really not working, truthfully. So again, I'm giving a long answer because I'm just kind of breaking down some things that as you want to kind of compare and contrast what we have now as to what people are hoping that we can move towards. I'll say this one last thing. Prescription drugs. You got to know that under our system right now, it makes no sense why a diabetic medication, why asthma medication is 3, sometimes 10 times more in this country than in another country, and it works the same way. Something is wrong with that picture, you all. And so in socialized medicine, hopefully what they would tend to, and I use that word loosely, that what they're looking toward is lowering prescription costs so that it is an equal playing field across the board. So those are just some of the tenets of what you would see in that type of move.
No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. No, I totally agree. As one who deals with type 1 diabetes, right? Like even the amount of information, like I have my Dexcom, so I don't have to prick my fingers. Stuff just sends my phone. I know where I am at all times. If I go too high, it tells me too high, too low. It's kind of weird. I feel like RoboCop, but at the same time, there are people in other neighborhoods that don't even know this technology exists. You know what I'm saying? And dealing with either a form of diabetes or the same form, and yet my health is treated differently because of my circumstance. And I think that's where I have problems with that, right? Like, I think that everybody should receive help. It shouldn't matter, because I have this job or whatever, I can have access to something that would prolong my life, at least more efficiently, right? And be made aware of it sooner. Where are we going, Dr. Shepherd? We'll start with you and then Derek. And you can address this from a medical standpoint. Is there like you talked about, the pharmaceutical companies and how it's really based and set up for profiteering. And I know this medicine is expensive. It's crazy. And, if you invest in like Johnson & Johnson, they do give dividend payouts, so like, it's just crazy how much money is just wrapped up into other people's illnesses. Where does it collide? Like, where are we going? Are we coming to a point where it's like, that we have a lobbyist or a PAC group for doctors that are fighting against things like this so that we can make sure that we're able to attend to our patients? What is that dialogue that we don't hear or see?
Well, actually, you're starting to hear the dialogue. The coronavirus has brought the dialogue out. Okay. And again, the coronavirus has done so much this year. It's brought out, like I say, it's ripped the Band-Aid off of so many of the ills of this country. The ills were already present, but this coronavirus has just stirred up so many different ills.
Sure.
So for the doctors, it's a hard way for us to go. I'll be honest with you, doctors are hurting right now. This coronavirus has affected my pocket and others' pocket. Regardless of what Donald Trump says, he don't know what he's talking about. We have not profited off of the coronavirus. Lord Jesus, I felt something else come up.
Yeah, you can cuss out here. No, I'm just joking.
You're the host of It Is What It Is. I have a reputation outside of It Is What It Is.
Hey,
I'm on a whole Come on, Derek. I gotta hold on to that.
Yo, hold on, brother. Hold on.
I'm gonna just nudge you. I'm just nudging. I felt those words. I felt 4 letters. I just wanted to see where you was going with it.
No. I was just gonna say the devil is a liar. This man get up here talking about the doctors are profiting.
Right.
I can believe that. Every doctor should have been offended by what this man said over the weekend. Doctors are hurting. Hospitals are hurting. And so for us, it is a strain right now.
Yeah.
Because there's so many doctors who have lost money. They've lost their practices. They've lost their ability to even work in some areas because of the coronavirus. They've had to shut down their practices. I know where people who worked in hospitals where 2 doctors moved out, 2 cardiologists moved out of a city in Pennsylvania, where I was just last week. Sure. And now there's only 1 cardiologist because they didn't have enough money to keep those 2 doctors there because all the elective procedures got cut. So now what are people supposed to do? So how am I answering your question?
Sure.
As a physician, it is a hard way to go. It is a struggle, because we want to be able to make our livelihood. We want to be able to make a living. This is the passion. This is the practice that I have, that God has given to me.
Right.
But I don't want to profit. And most doctors do not want to profit off of people's illness. So there's a way, and hopefully I'm
that makes sense.
Demonstrating this as clearly as I can, because there's a pull. It's a tug of war for us.
Yeah.
We don't go around thinking the worst of people.
Mm-hmm.
For that to be said about a doctor is truthfully just disparaging, disrespectful.
I love it. Derek, where are we going? There's let's talk about economically then socially, right? Right now, Wall Street, you have unofficial reports that saying, they're becoming more in love with the Biden administration or Biden presidency. At the same time, they haven't disavowed what a Trump presidency would look like for economic outlook. And from all this, it's created a lot of tension. Rumors of increased gun sales. You see I guess they were heading to Texas, right? And a Biden tour bus was surrounded by, a lot of Trump supporters, and it almost created this kind of crash, and it was this real kind of toxic scenario. What is happening, right? Like where is this thing shifted? Is it pregame jitters, or is this really alluding to something down the road? Like it doesn't end tomorrow. Like whatever tomorrow's result happens, the economic fallout will be what? What does that look like, Derek?
Yeah, well, I think, 4 years ago really showed us something. And I think everybody was saying, there was a lot of rhetoric around we're in a post-racial society, and we've overcome sort of these civil unrest issues and these demons of our past as a country. And I remember posting 4 years ago, I said, if that's so true, then why is Donald Trump more than just a comical interruption in our political agenda? Why is he now all of a sudden someone who's leading in the polls and someone who is being taken as a serious candidate with all of the hate rhetoric and all of the racist language that was coming out of his mouth at the time before becoming the president? And I think the reason is because there were so many undercover people that felt uncomfortable doing that during while we were all holding hands and singing Kumbaya around the campfire with President Obama. Sure. That it was just uncomfortable as a country if you were a bigot to come out and say, hey, I'm a bigot. But then Donald Trump came along and made it okay. He made it okay for you to use certain type of rhetoric, and not only use the rhetoric, but now see that there's not going to be recourse, as we saw in Virginia when the riot broke out there, and he praised the white supremacists as simply being good people who were both exercising sides. There were good people on both sides, right? And so I think when you start to see this, this discourse play out over the last 4 years, there's a legitimate group of people who think that somehow God's righteousness is being executed through this man with this hateful speech and language that we're seeing. And so I think what a lot of people are concerned about now is even with tomorrow's election, with the results, that people are preparing for the worst. They're preparing for civil unrest. They're preparing that if Biden wins, that now all of a sudden we need to become the righteousness of God and go out and execute that judgment. That's why we can follow a campaign bus down the highway in Texas because we're doing the Lord's work somehow. And I think, if we're not careful, we're going to get into a us versus them. And I think the language that we're seeing even on both sides is like, we ready. It ain't just white NRA Republican gun, NRA card carrying folks that are going out buying guns. It's folks in the hood going out and buying guns. Everybody's going out and buying guns. Everybody's going out and stocking up on groceries. And so I think we have to be careful that after this election, we still got to live together peaceably. Right. And, forgive me for still being a preacher, 100% of the time, not sometime, but all the time. I'm still I still believe what that book says. And it says we've got to live peaceably with all men, and we've got to learn how to do that. And so regardless of whether Trump's in office or regardless of whether Biden's in office, we've got to figure out how to put these differences aside and this language aside that we continue to throw and hurl across social media at each other. I've never seen, let's forget black and white. I've never seen so many black folks and so many Christian folk attacking each other on social media because they have a difference of political opinion. And I think if we're not careful, it's satanic, it's demonic. And what we don't see is that this conflict is an internal conflict that if we don't reconcile it with ourselves, forget what the world's going to look like in 5 or 10 years from now. We're going to tear it all apart. We're going to be in the 60s again, burning our cities down if we don't come together and figure out how to move forward as a nation and as a country of people who want to see the best for our children, for our communities, for our families, and for those around us, regardless of what they look like. And so I'll leave this last little piece here. When we talk about sort of the markets and the economy, the economics of it, I think I had a lot of friends exchanging messages in the chat that I'm in, all investors, and folks like, well, do I sell before the 3rd? Are we going to see the market crash on the 3rd? Like if Biden gets in, is everything going to flop? And if you weren't paying attention, the last week was actually rough on the markets. The markets have already started to make a move. And so I think there's people that are going to benefit regardless. There are people who know how to play the game. There are people that are controlling the markets. And at the end of the day, it doesn't come down to whether it's a Biden or a Trump. It comes down to these decisions that our legislators are going to make in the House and the Senate to provide economic relief and benefit to people, to Wall Street, to big businesses. Our airlines still have a huge issue to address. The hotel and hospitality industry have a huge issue to address. And the one that we won't talk about are our farmers and agriculture. Agriculturally, we got to help do something about our farmers because they're struggling right now to get product to market. And so USDA stepping in, buying senior lunches or meals, and we're handing out meals and things like that. And that's one way to provide some economic relief for farmers. But, if we're not careful, we're going to see a food shortage here because we're not taking it seriously and we're not addressing the big issues.
No, I love it. I want to introduce my guest, John. Thank you, Bishop Robinson, so much for joining us. I appreciate you. I'm just a small town, light-skinned Kojic preacher. So anytime anybody wants to come on this platform, you're more than welcome. I want to start with you, Bishop Robinson, and you have the floor. And then Dr. Shepard, then Derek. This probably be the last question. Derek really hit on the internal turmoil that's happening in the body of Christ, right? I joke, I say things, I'm wild. I got a wild sense of humor. If you know my dad, he had the same sense of humor. That's just me. Don't mean anything by it. I just like to laugh. I don't always like to be deep, because if you grew up like I grew up with, everybody else was playing baseball, I was visiting, the sick and the shut in and watching older people die, and it just messed me up. So I like to laugh to deal with pain. That's just me. But I've never seen the church so like this. There's always been differences. We've always had differences, but now it's just, we're not even communicating. It's just like, my side versus your side. So Bishop Robinson, so coming into tomorrow, we've always had the evangelical church. We've always had the black church, but now it's like we have fractions within that, right? Like there's subgroups even within those broad categories. What should be the church's response for tomorrow? I've seen, and I know that's kind of a loaded question because you can go anywhere with it, but I've seen pastors call for prayer for peace, right? Are we at that point that the church now has to ask God for peace, that there won't be a peaceful transition of power? And Bishop Robinson, the floor is yours.
Oh boy. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me on the show. I don't know if I'm thanking you for this question. The position of the church should actually, and I say that with some, limited perspective, but certainly it is appropriate to pray. Certainly it is within the universal context of the theologies of cross denominations that we should always pray and not faint. We should pray for peace in terms of, now I define peace in the words of the liberation theologian Paulo Freire, who said that peace is not defined as the absence of conflict. And that's important to remember. But Freire was trying to say that it is the ability to disagree with civility, that disagreement does not devolve into anarchy and gross exploits of violence because I didn't get my way. That's another thing. So we all have to work the process, which means to vote. That means we do all have a voice. The guarantee of a voice is not synonymous with the guarantee of our way. And somehow in our culture of entitlement, we've conflated the two and even created justification for that. But so it is with prayer. We have the right to ask for whatever we want, to come boldly before the throne. But the purpose of prayer is not really to manipulate God to do our will as much as it is to discern, trust, and obey the will of God, even if that will is to have, it won't be the first time. There's a whole list of rulers of questionable character in Israel's history. So that's the mystery of it all. So yes, we should pray, but with all of those things in mind, I would say.
So that means you voted for Kanye, right? Is that what I'm hearing? Or
no. I have a different personal opinion.
I love it. Dr. Shepard, and then I'll give everybody their 1 minute question. 1 minute. What is your message? And we'll make it specific, right? What is your message to the medical field? Let's say you were invited tomorrow to speak to all the medical doctors in the U.S. and you had to tell them something that was correlating to this election. What would that be?
Oh, that message would be simple. That message would simply state, first of all, you are needed. You are needed, you are important, and you are valued. That would be the themes that I would resonate throughout all of my speaking to them. You're needed, you're valued, and you're appreciated. And we have the intellect. God has afforded us the intellect to deal with the problems that we're facing. And then at the end of it, I would encourage them, because so many doctors have spent so many hours. I'm working at a rate at which I have not worked at since I was in residency, and I wasn't getting paid in residency. And even now, my salary had been cut, but thank God he continues to provide for me and be able to restore me back to where I was. But again, I say that with all humility, because with all that, it wasn't about the money. It is about our ability to serve mankind. And that is what I would encourage them to remember, why we are here, the purpose for what we were created to do, and that is to serve mankind.
I love it. Derek, same question. If you were invited to all the investors and, you have the economic floor and, everybody's wondering, should I sell? Should I, hold on? Me personally, I'm going to just be honest, and I want to get in trouble with the SEC. I'm not about to dump any of my stocks. Just wait till it gets low enough and then I'll buy some more. So what would you tell them? Good Reverend Derek.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that I don't operate, and I think this may sound very cliche, so forgive me, but I really don't operate on the world's monetary system, right? Because I don't place my faith in this very uncertain time and these uncyclical things. And I think a lot of people who do that find themselves depressed, and they find themselves, their mood moves with the economic cycles. And so what I would encourage people is to, one, think long term, and our future is bright. I believe that. I believe that the best is ahead of us, because if the best was behind us, we're in trouble. I believe that the outlook is going to look bright in the long run, and I think we have to continue to stay the course. And what I mean by stay the course is we know where the critical investments are needed. We know where our money is best put to work. And now is not the time to be frivolous. I've been telling all of the people in my circle, if you don't need it right now, don't buy it. Don't pay for it. I do believe there is economic drought coming, a famine that's going to hit the land. I don't believe that God's people will be affected if they exercise biblical principle of knowing when to sow and when to reap. But one of my favorite scriptures in Proverbs says, consider the ant who is wise and knows when to store. And so when times were plenty, you should have been storing. If times are still plenty for you right now, keep storing, because there's going to come a day where cash it's already king, but cash will be the economy of the hour. And those who are not prepared are going to miss opportunities. Right there, you're going to see real estate prices drop.
Yeah.
And you're going to see what will become a buyer's market. And if you don't have the cash to buy, banks ain't going to lend you money. You need to be ready to move and have cash on hand. But if you bought that Dooney and Burke, or you've been, going on them these quarantine vacations to Mexico and Cancun because you just need to get away, right. That's money that you could afford to store up, because I promise you a year or two from now, there's going to be some opportunities that you don't want to miss because you didn't properly plan for them.
No, you're absolutely right. You could have opened up a dispensary with all the stuff you spent on going to Mexico. So, Bishop Robinson, you have the floor. If you had to tell
there, come on now, come on. I'm not gonna let that fly. Elder.
That's just a little.
I will say though, if I had invested in something a few years ago, Lord have mercy, the way that thing jumped.
I'll chat about offline. I'll chat offline. But anyway, so Bishop Robinson, you had to stand before the body of Christ, and that'd be a whole lot of people, and they're coming up. And obviously you can't endorse anybody, but if you had to give them some words to go forward on in a minute, what would you tell them?
Wow. I would tell them to exercise our fullest opportunities that are available to us as citizens. You got to get involved in the moment. You got to see that in the voting. It is your voice. You got to at least do that. Don't let apathy kick in. And again, I would equate it with prayer, that we can express what we want. And then we have to trust that after we've done that, not just to sound churchy, but it's the wisdom of the scriptures, having done all to stand. meaning do all of the parts that we have been given the common grace to do, and then trust that God has a plan and that somehow it's going to work out for good. But we have to do our part, and that would be the 1 minute elevator pitch. Yes.
I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate it. I'm super excited. I have some amazing episodes. Right now, I have to put things until tomorrow. When tomorrow's results come in, I don't know. But for sure, next week, we're doing the Surviving the Holidays couple edition. And we also got some things along fitness. But I'm really excited about tomorrow because my hope and prayer is that we just move forward as a country. That's my hope and prayer. I didn't have anything deep on that. But Bishop Robinson, where can they connect with you? What are you doing? Where can the people connect with you?
I'm at Bishop G. Robinson on Instagram, Bishop CGR on Twitter, and CGR Ministries on Facebook. Love to stay connected.
Awesome. Right, Reverend Derek Scott, where can they connect with you?
I'm Derek Scott on Facebook and Hope Pusher 24 on Instagram.
Awesome. The right, good Reverend Dr. Jonathan Shepherd, also running for the general board. Where can they connect with you?
Not the general board.
The general board of certified medical professionals.
Right. You can be the Bishop of Medicine.
You know what? I tell you. Bishop Robinson is the Bishop of Medicine over at Mental Wellness. Yeah, he got a new appointment, y'all, since the last time we got together.
Hey, he coming up. I felt your report increase with that.
Yeah, Bishop. Yeah. Now look, I am running for trustee board in Koji. So that is the truth. So amen. I'll leave that alone.
Who is the trustee right now? I think I know.
Who is the trustee right
now? Who's in the office?
There's 15 of them.
Oh my gosh,
it's not just one; it's 15 of them.
We got to get Cody to General Assembly,
right? Yeah,
right, yeah. My bad. I don't be paying attention during that.
Yeah. but we can reach out to me, Jonathan Shepherd. You can hit me up on Facebook, Dr. J Shep. As far as Instagram, Twitter. You can check me out on YouTube. And I must mention Spirit in Mind, which is on Saturdays, which these two brothers have been on. And so we have had a wonderful relationship that continues to draw us closer together. But myself and Bishop are co-hosts of that. And it sounds like we're going to have Cody and Derek back on
we got to
very, very soon, because these discussions are wonderful. And so that's Saturdays at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. I must promote that.
Awesome. I love it. Look, connect with these guys. These guys are really doing great things, not just in the body of faith, but in the world. I mean, we're talking about from academic studies with Bishop Robinson. We're talking about in the medical field, Dr. Shepherd. We're talking about in the economic field. Derek is somebody. And if I ever need any money, he's going to be the first person I call because I know Derek is good for it. I appreciate you guys so much. Till next time. Thanks.
All right. See you.
Peace.